All I can say is, wow. I have dreamt of this. I've been with Asset since 2001. It's been an unbelievable journey. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about today, what I do today, how I start my day every day, and then I'm going to tell some stories about how I got here from there. And I think that's the most important message that I can communicate today and what's going on. When I start my day out in the morning, I get up, I work out every day. 38 years old, I weigh 285 pounds. That's a story all of itself. So I've been on a perpetual diet all of my life. So I start out every day, I work out. I used to do Taibo kickboxing. Now I do P90X, yoga, Tai Chi. And I do something every day. This morning was 15, 20 minutes of ab ripper. So I work at that. It's important to me. It's my life. It's what I live every day. So I get all done with my workout, and I head into my shower. In my house, I have a little room in the basement. It's my office and my shower. And when I step into the shower, I start out. Boy, am I enthusiastic. Boy, am I enthusiastic. Boy, am I enthusiastic. I feel happy. I feel healthy. I feel terrific. I feel happy. I feel healthy. I feel terrific. I'm alive. I'm alert. I'm a winner. I'm alive. I'm alert. I'm a winner. And that's how I start. I want to start every day at the height of enthusiasm that I can start with. The word enthusiasm, Greek word enthos, God within. And I believe that with all my heart. And then I start. I know I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action toward its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such action. I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture. I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back of it. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. I have clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim in life, and I will not give up until I have developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I'll engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use in the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism from my life by developing a love for all people. I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself. I will sign my name to this formula, commit it to memory, and repeat it aloud once each day. With full faith, it will gradually influence my thoughts and actions, and I will become a more self-reliant and successful person. Title of my talk, thank you. Title of my talk is Be the Example. And being the example, we all today are who we are because of influence of other people in our lives. The examples that other people set, that was the only guide that we had to see what other people did. So if I go back to the story and even back all the way to where I was 12 years old, I had a unique ability. I had a very mechanical ability. I had a 52 Ford at 12 years old. I removed the automatic transmission, put a bell housing, clutch plate, put everything in it. I manufactured with a welder my own double shift. Anybody knows a floor shift? You know, it's an H. I created one with two levers because I couldn't go to the store at 12 years old and buy a shifter. So I made my own. We rented a farm, 50-acre farm, and the owner of the farm used to get mad because I would drive my car through the fields and tear up the fields. At that time in my life, my father had a really great friend. His name was Thomas Johnson. And most of the time when I saw him when I was that age, he had bib overalls on and big red hanky out of his pocket. He was from Kentucky. He was a good friend of my dad through Ambridge Sportsman's Club. It was a sportsman's club we belonged to. But Mr. Johnson was a mechanical engineer. And he had 38 patents at Armco Steel in Ambridge. And eventually they fired him because his patents generated more income than the president of the company earned. But they actually owned the patents. So that was the way it went. And when I was a kid, I used to think about, boy, my ability, my mechanic ability, I was going to grow up and I was going to become a mechanical engineer. And my dad had an 8th grade education, grew up on a farm. My mother had a 10th grade education. You know, we had lots of love in our house. If there was nothing else, there was lots of love always. And my dad used to tell me, Tom, get that out of your head. We're not the kind of people that go to college. There's no money. We don't make any money. I worked 3 jobs. And that was the way it was. So my next dream became, okay, I got through high school. I did graduate with a big D minus. Some of the teachers were glad I left. And Merritt mentioned I have 2 advanced certificates as a human behavior consultant. Now, all that means is I've gone through the course twice because once wasn't enough to understand and study DISC. You saw that earlier. That became so important in doing that. And I look back at my early days, and I have a D driver dominant personality. And one thing I've learned, don't tell me what to do, because I'm not going to do it. You don't tell D people what to do. So after I graduated high school, went off to the Air Force. And if anybody remembers the 120-day delay plan where you signed up, here's what you wanted. And if you went in today, you got whatever they gave you, but you could sign up and have a 120-day delay plan. And my dream was to be a jet engine aircraft mechanic. It went from automobiles, so now I wanted to be a jet engine aircraft mechanic. Went to the Air Force, went through basic training. At the end of the basic training, I didn't get any orders. Week went by, 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, a month went by, and I ended up driving the garbage truck, cleaning the messes out of the chow hall. And now during basic, I took a test. It was I don't forget how many questions, but I scored 98 out of 100. And they told me that's what messed me up. I was too smart to be a mechanic, so they made me a paramedic. So, okay, that's the thing. So now I wanted to go home. I was getting homesick. I had never been away from home before. And actually, I was in Texas, and the medical school's in Sheppard Air Force Base in the northern panhandle of Texas. And boy, the weather there, in the morning it would be snow. By lunch, sun to be out. By 4 o'clock, it's raining, and at midnight, it's snowing again. So that was crazy weather. I got out of the Air Force, married a lovely lady named Teresa. Today I have a daughter, Sarah, my son-in-law, Will, who is an ex-Marine. If you ever wanted to make sure somebody was there to take care of your daughter, man, hope she marries an ex-Marine. This kid is great. Scary thing is he's a diesel mechanic, and he reminds me of me 45, 50 years ago. So scary, but scary good. So we got married. Today I got a grandson, another one on the way in April. Joined American Bridge Company, steel mill. Worked there about 6 months, went from there to the railroad, was there a couple of years. Just wasn't gaining anything. So the opportunity, the dream, Tom's Auto Body came into being. So Tom's Auto Body was an auto body shop. I had been working on cars in my garage at home to make a few extra bucks because I wasn't making a lot of money. So I opened Tom's Auto Body, and I used to do custom pictures on motorcycle gas tanks and race cars. I built racing engines. So it was that evolvement of my dream that was starting to come to fruition again. But the challenge is I had no examples, I had no influence, I had no mentors, I had no coaches. How do you make money in business? Okay, I'm in business, and I lost money. My business wasn't profitable. I loved what I did, but eventually somebody walked in my door one day and offered me money, and I sold the garage and got out of the automobile business. And I swore I was never going to do that again. So 6 months searching for a job, I was going back to that safe employment at the mill. You know, I've heard people say that. You know, I wanted them safe jobs, you know, where it was safe and secure. So I interviewed with some people, and a couple of them, they knew me from when I had my business. They were actually customers, and here I am applying for a job. And I remember the conversation with one of the gentlemen, and he said, Tom, he says, I'd hire you in a heartbeat. He says, I know you could do every job in my shop. You could run every machine. You could do everything out there. But he says, I'm not going to hire you. And I'm desperate. I'm 6 months, no work. All the money I made when I sold the garage, it's all gone. And I'm desperate now. And I said, well, why? He says, because you had your own business once, and 6 months or a year from now, you're going to be gone. And I'm not going to train you to do what I do. So I sucked it up. I said I'm never going to work on cars again. I went to work at Beglin Motor Car, Ford dealership. And I started out as a regular mechanic. In 6 months, I was the automatic transmission overhauler. And that mechanical ability, I'd never worked on automatic transmissions, but the boss asked me one day, he says, can you work on automatic transmissions? I says, do you have a motor manual? He said, yeah. I says, well, I can work on automatic transmissions. And I'd go into the bathroom and I'd sit on the pot and I'd read the book and learn how to do it. It was just that gift that I had to look at mechanical things and figure them out. During this period of time, I had the business, sold the business. When we got married, the family insurance agent sold us a family life insurance policy. Now, the funny part, this was the family insurance agent, but when my father-in-law died, he had $2,500 of life insurance. I don't know how I would call him the family insurance agent. Sold us a family policy. In the process, I bought a garage, Tom's Auto Body. I had a mortgage on that. And we called him up one day, and I said I needed more life insurance. He came to the house. He alluded to me that I sort of felt I couldn't own more than one life insurance policy. So we replaced one with a new one with a term rider for the mortgage on the garage. And doing this, he says, look, he says, I need you to pay the premium on this old policy 3 more months. Well, okay. And he said, oh, you don't have to, it's not going to cost you anything because the money's already inside the policy. So we'll just do it 3 months. Now, let me step out a minute. Anybody been around long enough to remember the replacement rule when it was 3 months? Back in the 70s or the 60s, so I know now what that was all about. All that was done. Several months later, I get a phone call one night on the telephone. This gentleman introduced himself, said he was an investigator for the insurance company. And I said, what did I do wrong? He says, no. He says, sometimes we follow up with people to find out, why did you drop one policy and buy another one a few months later? Well, I told him this retirement story because the agent said if I didn't pay the payment 3 more months, it would affect his retirement. He was getting ready to retire because he had the sales manager with him the day he was in my house. And so I told this guy that. He says, Mr. Young, I think we need to talk. So he came back. They reversed everything that we did, gave me my money back. I thought that really impressed me. Next thing I know, the local, now this original insurance people was from Pittsburgh, 30 miles away where my wife was from. So now the local sales manager shows up at my house. Don Workley, God love him, showed up at my house, my kitchen table, and I'm there in my mechanic blues. I don't own any dress clothes. I own jeans, mechanic blues, and that was my lifestyle. And he sat there for an hour and convinced me to come to the Prudential office and meet with the manager because he thought I could do this insurance business stuff. Somehow, some way, he saw something in me I didn't see in me. So I said, okay, sure. Now, I got to tell you about the appointment that day. I go to the Prudential office. Now, I walk in the office. He's got this mahogany desk and big bookshelves and everything. Some of us have offices like that today. And he sat there and he's telling me all this stuff what I can have. But you had to understand what I look like when I walked in. Now, it's January in Pennsylvania. I'm the automatic transmission guy, and my appointment's at noon. So all morning, it snowed the night before, so I'm underneath the cars all morning. I took a transmission out, started to overhaul it, and I was 250 pounds. I had this big plaid, tan and brown plaid coat, and there were these big orange-red spots on it. Anybody know what that is? Transmission juice. If you're talking pans out from under the car, you're going to get it on you. I told this to another manager one time, sometimes later. He says, I wouldn't even have talked to you. I said, okay, that would have been your loss. So I go to this meeting, and he gives me this program. It's called Career Introductory Program. Some of you may remember that. I had to come back with 6 weeks. I had to have 100 names and phone numbers to start. And I left there that day, and I don't know what it was. I was looking for that opportunity, that one thing. Didn't know what it was. Nobody told me about it. I had nobody to talk to. And I went home, and I talked to my wife, and I stayed up every night that week. I went back a week later, the following Monday. I had all 6 weeks of the course done completely, and I had a list of 225 names and phone numbers. Those were the customers from my garage when I had the automobile garage in my shop. So on that day, he didn't know how to react. I actually got hired before I was licensed. I took a test. There was a 28-question test that I had to take. He says, you got to do this before we do anything. So I sat down at round table in his office. I took this test, got it done, handed it back to him, and he's looking at it, and he says, how'd you do this? Well, I said, just answer the questions. He said, no, how'd you do this? You got them all right. He says, in 30 years, nobody ever got it right. I looked back, and there were times we all looked back at the footprints in the sand. I wanted it so bad, and God knew it. He knew it. He made things happen that day. Started in the insurance business. You imagine this big room. Anybody know what the bullpen office looks like? There were 70 guys, few women, and 6, 8 guys on his staff. Marty, you remember that? That was it, So every Friday was the hoopla day because that was the sales meeting. And every Friday, how many sales did you get this week? How much premium did you write? How much commission did you make? And it became, it was a contest. It didn't matter who you were selling it to. It didn't matter what it was doing for anybody. But my personality requires recognition. I'm sorry, it just does. And I loved it. And in the first year, I led the office. They made me a sales manager. I took a staff that ranked 88 out of 88 out of 95, and then 10 months later, we were 10th. And I made a lot of money for everybody else because I had 7 guys on the staff. So I'm out with Joe Monday night, Bob Tuesday night, John Wednesday night. I was out every darn night of the week. And guess what they did on the nights they weren't with me? They were sitting home. So after about 10 months of that, I decided that was enough of that. I resigned the sales manager position, went back into personal production. My third year with the Prudential, I was 86 out of 25,000 agents. And I look back, I was still broke. It was fun, I was still broke. But during that third year, I'd written a little family policy on a guy named John, his wife Beverly. They had a brand new baby. About 6 months after I wrote the policy, the baby died. I can't tell you then what it meant to that, but I remember delivering that $5,000 check to their little apartment in Falston. It was just a little 3-room apartment, and sat there and I cried with them, and I left there that day. I didn't know what that meant to me at that time, but it just never went away. Short while later, I left Prudential, started my own. I became a general agent with General American Life Insurance Company. I was recruited by a guy named Nick Kahalik. I used to joke Kahalik. He was alcoholic, we used to call him, Nick Kahalik. And he was a great guy. But again, I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for mentors. Because I've had enough pain now. Somebody please help me. Somebody show me what to do. Because I didn't go to college. I got out of high school, went to the Air Force. And so all this time, and then I started to realize, and even Nick, as great a guy as he was, and I had other people come along that, they appeared and sounded good, but they were only recruiters. Because of my sales record, the success that I had worked harder than anybody else to achieve, I became their radar. So everybody was knocking on, oh, come with us. And I figured that out quick, and then all of a sudden I shut everybody out. Now I'm afraid to look for a mentor, because every time I started to get close to somebody, I found out they were just looking to fill their own pockets with my production and what was going on and not really helping me. Along come a guy named Bob Castellone. So some of you in the room know Bob Castellone. His personality doesn't allow a lot of people to get close to him if you know Mr. Castellone. But he was the first mentor that came to change my life about the business. And I remember going to a meeting in Pittsburgh. There were 12 of us in the room. He came, and Stan Casella, his assistant at that time, and he did this interest move. Showed lost opportunity cost, and actually it was part of the presentation I did in Vancouver at $1 Million Roundtable last October. $100,000 CD, 35 years, it's worth $550,000. But if you figure the tax, the lost opportunity cost, and the inflation devaluation of the money, it costs you $780,000 to get there. We're all talking about life insurance. If you can tell that story effectively to a client, they will buy anything you tell them to buy and reuse the money for other good things, like life insurance and annuities and that type of stuff. So all of a sudden, things are starting to go pretty good. Knock on the door, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. I look out the window and there's a guy standing out there in a uniform. It was a sheriff. Mr. Young, I need your signature. You're officially served. Sign for this. What's this? Open it up, the $800,000 lawsuit. I can't describe what that felt like because it took everything away. At that moment in time, all I saw was what started to look good was going to be gone. I didn't know what I did wrong. I figured, okay, we got through the weekend. Monday morning, I got on the phone. I called my E&O insurance. Everybody have E&O insurance, right? 3 days later, I got a certified letter from the E&O insurance. They denied my coverage. I don't know if any of you experienced that before, but not knocking the companies or broker dealers or anybody, but when the crap comes, you're on your own. Don't think they're going to back you because they don't. I had to hire my own attorney to sue the E&O company to get them to take the case. They took the case. A little bit of the story, the guy was a young 35-year-old electrician making $70,000 a year. This is back in the 80s. Big money, single, never married. I met him through my CPA. He was the first real referral I ever got from one of my professional friends, advisors, so I felt pretty good about it. His name was Bob. Come to the office, and at that time I'm doing LEAP, so I'm doing a comprehensive financial planning questionnaire. I get all the information, I got all the documents and everything that this guy had, and the number one goal was Mom at 73 had $125,000 in mutual funds, and he and Mom decided they wanted to transfer that to him. He was an only son, so that was part of it. Long story short, I wrote a whole life policy with a single premium rider, put all that money into a single premium rider policy. So it had 98% cash value immediately, so we lost literally no money. And he says, can I put more in? I said, sure. I says, you want to put 250 or 500? He said, let's put 500 in. So we set it all up. Several months go by. All of a sudden, he calls, makes an appointment, comes to my office. He says, Tom, he says, I don't know what to tell you. I says, I have now fallen out of love with the electrical union. He was a union electrician. And he says, my income this year is only going to be 20 grand. He said, I'm not going to make 70,000 this year. I said, okay, simple choice. I says, we can either change the policy and eliminate you having to add money to it because we had more than enough cash value to do that, or do you think what's going on temporary, you're going to get your income back? So, oh yeah, just a few more months and I'll be back making good money again. I says, well, then we can do a loan from the insurance company and pay the premium, and that way you can put it back in later so you'll still be able to put the money in. He's okay, let's do that. So over a course of a 2-year period of time, he was in my office every 3 or 4 months. We'd have the same conversation over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. He disappeared. Didn't come around. A few months go by, and that was when the sheriff showed up on my door that Saturday morning. You just don't know where it's going to come from. So for the next 3.5 years of my life, I wrote 2 sales in 3.5 years. Both of them were clients that called me and said, I want this. I didn't go because my confidence in what I was doing was gone. I was still trying to figure out what I did wrong. How did I cause this lawsuit? How did all this stuff happen to me in my life and what was going on? So I remember the deposition, and I'm sitting in the deposition, and I got attorneys all around me. I mean, I got E&O attorneys. I got the attorney that I originally hired. I still retained him. There were 2 attorneys from the insurance company, 2 attorneys from the broker-dealer, and here was this CPA's son. So here was the story. The son of my CPA had referred this guy to me. He didn't even have a degree in accounting, and he held himself out as an advisor. And the thing that saved me was I had all those documents. You know, we've talked the last 4 days about DOL and comprehensive planning. I was exonerated from this lawsuit at the deposition. Within a week, I got my letter of release. Because as I gathered the documents, this so-called young 35-year-old man in the charges against me said he was a snowy white, didn't know anything about investing. He didn't know this, and so he was the snowy white. But he had 6 real estate holdings that were commercial real estate holdings and all this other stuff going on in his life. But the one document that I did get, he had a private placement. Now imagine a 35-year-old electrician, single, making $70,000 a year. What would it take to buy into a leveraged private placement? Got to have $1 million in net worth, $200,000 a year income, or you're one of those 35 non-accredited people that your financial planner can sign off. I had that document. You know whose signature was on the document? The CPA's son. And I sat in that deposition, and the attorney beside me, a young guy from Philadelphia, handed me a tablet, and he said, Tom, he says, I'm going to talk to this kid every time he says something. Here's a pencil, you write something down. I want him to think you're writing something down every time he says something. 10 minutes into it, the kid lost his temper. His attorney tried to shut him up, and he blew it from there. But I was exonerated. 6 months later, the second lawsuit came into play, and it was a broker. You know, we all look for producers, right? You're looking for producers. Had this young man, I was doing LEAP training. He showed up at a meeting. He became a broker. I helped him write a policy on a guy. It was a life insurance policy. It was a great sale. 6 months later, I get a phone call from this client of his. Says, Mr. Young, I thought I had to call you and tell you about the $50,000 I loaned Dave. You what? He says, yeah. He says, I had a CD, and I took it out, and I loaned it to Dave. He was buying a business, a finance business, high-risk loans, and this guy was originally from penny stock sales. So that took about 18 months. At the end of that, what really came out of that is I was exonerated because some of the charges was I provided the questionnaire that allowed the broker to gather the information from the client to know the client had the CD. Now, that's an oxymoron for today, what they're telling us we got to do today in what we're doing. But here it turns out it was the guy's second cousin. They were related. So that went away. Now, let me move on. During my early time at Prudential, I had one thing happen. I kept hearing about Ben Feldman. Anybody ever heard about Ben Feldman? He was in the Guinness Book of World Records selling more life insurance than anybody in history. He lived 30 minutes from my home. I remember going on an appointment one night, and I went to his home, knocked on his door. I had an appointment that stood me up, pulled in the driveway. I watched the curtain move, but I knocked on the door, and nobody come to the door. When I got back in the car, I watched them looking out the window again. Marty, you ever gotten to one of those? Remember those days? So I got in the car, I got mad, I went to Mr. Feldman's home that night, knocked on his door, and Richard, his oldest son, who has now passed away, had their first baby that day. So his first grandchild was born that day. And I'm knocking on his door, and he's telling me this, but he says, come on in. I mean, that blew me away that he would invite me in when he's getting ready to go out the door to go to the hospital to see his first grandson that was born that day. And that little 2-minute talk I had with him, he says, Tom, he says, if you want to sell it to people, see, Ben Feldman talked with a lisp. He talked real quiet. You could hardly hear him. Today I couldn't hear him because I'm deaf on one side. And he says, you got to own it. You got to own it. You want to be successful? You go tomorrow to office and you buy a $100,000 policy on you. I did. And I sold 23 of them that year, $2,300,000 policies. That was my first qualification for $1 Million Roundtable. Excuse me, I get my notes. I don't want to get way off of this and do that. All this coming about, the lawsuits, I wanted out of the insurance business. I don't want nothing more to do with the life insurance business. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what to do. So I got recruited by a young man who was an accountant at the Girl Scout office. My daughter was a Girl Scout. And I was doing volunteer work for the Girl Scouts, my wife and I, so I'm at a cocktail party, and this young man named John Urich comes up to me, and we're talking, and he says, Mr. Young, do you ever look at other ways to make money? Now, when I was doing, well, I don't do that. I'm single-minded man. Double-minded man loses. If you know the Bible, it says that. So he says, okay, yeah. So we sat down, and he shows me the marketing plan of the Amway business, and I said, I could do that. I could do that. But he didn't inspire me. I said, okay, who do you work with? And he's this guy named John Scalercio. He's a dentist in Monaca, which was near where I lived. I said, set up a meeting. I want to meet him. So now a couple days later, we have another meeting, and I'm meeting John Scalercio. Now, if you can imagine the name, no offense to anybody in the room that's Italian. My wife's Italian Slovak. But it was bading, badang, badoom. I thought I was involved with the mafia. I mean, but he scratched this thing out on a piece of paper. And again, similar story. And I'm getting interested. And I said, okay, who do you work with? He introduced me to a guy named Dr. Richard Leposki, who's still a personal friend of mine today, lives in Atlanta. He's retired. And he was an oral maxillofacial surgeon. Came to my office, had a little round table there, and he's showing me the plan. And I remember in his folder, he laid a couple of checks out on the table. One was for $750,000, and the other one was $344,000. Now, about the time I honed in on them, now you're talking about sales technique. But the moment I honed in on him, he picked them up and put them back in and went on with his he was like moving them around, you know. And so I got involved, and I signed up. My wife didn't want nothing to do with it. She wouldn't give me a check, so I had to go to the drawer, and I got out a check out of an old checkbook to write the $98 check I had to write, because we didn't have any money. Remember where I'm at. I got no money. And my wife said, we're not going to do this. So I signed up anyway. And I remember going to this meeting, an opportunity meeting. I don't know if everybody been to an opportunity meeting. Years ago, they used to last hours. Today, they're like 45 minutes. And I still participate today, and you understand why. So I go to this meeting, and it's Jody Victor. That's the man I'm talking about. It's his father's house. It's in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. I know there's a few Ohio people here might know where Cuyahoga Falls is. And we pull in the driveway, and this yard is concrete. It parks 100 cars. 5-car garage, and we walk inside, and Dr. Leposki says, look over here. He opens the door, and there's 5 Cadillacs in the garage. Each Cadillac has its own hose. It's heated, ceramic walls. I mean, it's beyond your comprehension of what it is. Up the stairs and above the garage is a meeting room, seats 100 people, 150 people. So I met Mr. Victor when I walked in the door, his father, and then I met Jody. Now realize, Dr. Leposki, none of these people knew what was going on in my life. None. I didn't share that with anybody back then. I was so embarrassed. I was ashamed. I didn't know what the outcome, I didn't know whether I was going to jail or what it was going to be, so I didn't share with anybody. Jody got up in front of that meeting that night, and here's the people. There was an aisle down the middle and 2 sets of chairs. Must have been 100 people there. It was full. There was standing room, people standing in the back. Jody got up on the stage, and he started to talk, and he looks down, and he says, sometimes people just need a hug. And he looked right at me, sitting right there, the second row back on the end chair. He stepped down, picked me up, gave me a hug. I bawled like a little baby. I used to apologize for my emotions, but I don't, because God has told me this is how you change people's lives. You can't lie and do and be emotional. You can't do it. It's just, this is the most important thing in my life that I have done, to be invited. I'm honored to be here to speak to you folks today. It just is. So all of a sudden now, here's Jody. Picks me up, and all the way home that night, I'm thinking, God, how did he know that I needed that hug? And I came to the realization, I didn't want his money. I didn't want his wealth, although I could become a diamond and I could have all of that stuff and build that business and grow people, because see, the Amway business is about growing people. Jody never once asked me, how much sales did you make this week? He never asked me how many people I recruited this week or this month. It was always about, Tom, read this next book. He was all about growing the man or growing the woman, because he always told me, if you do what I tell you to do and you take my coaching, you will eventually be able to do whatever you choose to do. So that was the beginning of the coaching and the mentoring with Jody. And I forgot to get it. It's in my bag, my little book. One of the first books that Jody gave me to read was Think and Grow Rich. How many people have read Think and Grow Rich? How many people have read it 3 times in succession? How many people read it every year 3 times in succession? That book written by Napoleon Hill. It was the beginning of the catalyst that really gave me the unbelievable beginnings of courage and what I had lost through the lawsuits and everything. Napoleon Hill worked for Andrew Carnegie for about 25 years for what he says was a very meager salary. But any of you in history, Andrew Carnegie was one of the richest men in the world at that time. He put together the U.S. Steel deal in 1904. It was a $600 million deal that he got. And putting that together, excuse the audio people for my nose blow. So, and in that book, 25 years, Napoleon Hill, because of his relationship with Andrew Carnegie, he was able to interview 600 of the most successful, richest people in the world. And in that research, there were 13 common denominators that came to be, which is that book, Think and Grow Rich. And my self-talk, that's page 56 in that book. I know I had the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose. And I had notes, because if I was home in my shower, I don't need notes to read it, believe me, but I didn't want to mess it up in front of you and do that. So how could you ignore the information? And the most important one in the book is it's either 12 or 13, and it's about the mind. Bringing into your mind your own counsel. Now, I read this book. After the first time I read it, I said, okay, fix me. When I met Jody, and I read it back in the 80s when I was early in the insurance business, somebody gave me that book to read. I said, I read it. When Jody read it, he says, you read it, and we're going to talk about it. And that was when I found there was one sentence in that book by Napoleon Hill that says, if you really want this book to work, you have to do what it says to do, and you have to read it 3 times in succession. I've not met anybody that have found that sentence in the book yet. No offense, folks. So, counsel of the mind. And every night when I would go to bed, what you do is you have these people in your mind that are your mentors. They may be authors of books or people in your life that you had a relationship with. You know something about them. You know them well. The counsel of my mind every night has Jody Victor, Walt Disney, and the Lord Jesus Christ. Every night I would go to bed and I'd lay there and self-talk myself to sleep, expecting. 6 months went by, every night. And then it happened. How do you respond when Jesus Christ shows up in your sleep? I started to realize I was finally on the right road and looking for the people that could really help me. When I met Castellone, the thing that really made the difference there was the island story. When you're talking with a client, we have all been taught to be great salespeople. I remember at Prudential. Hi, Marty, glad to meet you. I'm from Prudential Life Insurance Company. I'm the local rep here in the Valley, and I have an idea that's real interest and value to other homeowners just like yourself, or other families just like yourself, or other new moms and dads just like yourself. However, it only take a few minutes for us to decide whether it be of value to you or not. That was what they taught me. But see now, here's a vision. Let me tell you a story. Here you are, an island in the South Pacific. It is the most beautiful place you've ever been to. I mean, you walk out, I mean, it looks like the Taj Mahal, Roman Gothic columns and everything, big swimming pool, and here's this guy and his wife. Beautiful, beautiful place. Out the back, he has his own golf course. There it is, beautiful. Out in the distance, big mountain, waterfall, hundreds of feet dropping waterfall coming off the mountain. I got an email text the other day from a friend of mine. He's in Hawaii right now, and there was that waterfall just falling down off the side of the mountain. And I'm the hotshot salesman, and I'm walking up. I'm an island salesman, so I come walking up on the beach and say, hi, how you doing? And start to have a conversation. He says, well, can I help you? I says, you know what? I'm checking out the area. You got a really nice place here. But he says, we just got some new listings, and I have 2 or 3 other islands that are over on the other side of yours. I think you'd be interested in going to look at. Do you think he'd be interested in going to look at another island when he was living on the perfect island in the world? No doubt in my mind he wasn't interested. So let's change now. I'm going to change. I'm going to get a pocket protector. I got 3 or 4 ink pens, and now I'm rowing up in a rowboat. Big, long, 18-foot rowboat. I come up on the shore, and I have my clipboard, and I'm walking around, and I'm taking notes, and I'm walking up and down the shore, and all of a sudden he notices me, and he comes looking for me. He says, can I help you? He says, this is my island. I says, my name's Tom Young. Nice to meet you, and I'm a seismologist, and you've got a beautiful place, but we're concerned in our studies. What we found is that mountain where the waterfall comes down, that's the remnants of a volcano from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And right now, our instruments are telling me that there are tremors going on under your island. He says, yeah, he says, I have felt that too. I've seen the U.S. debt clock, and haven't we told this story to a lot of our clients and try to help them see and feel the tremors that are going on under the ground? So I started talking about that, and I says, our indication here is sometime in the not too distant future, this volcano is going to re-erupt. And potentially it's going to take your whole island away. See, here's the documents. He actually participated. I went through the research with him. I helped them understand the numbers. He ran the calculator. He understood. He had an aha moment. He says, well, what should I do? I says, you know what? I says, I have 2 or 3 other islands that I know we've checked out. No volcanoes. How about we go over there and see what we can do and find our way? You got to, folks, you got to learn how to tell the island story to the client. Because the moment of success is when the client says, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. The other book that Jody gave me, and my mentorship with Jody is still going on today. A short time after, the Amway business, I had some success there, but I couldn't get rid of the death claim on the baby. It was just still there. There was something there. I had some success in the Amway business, but it didn't give me that same feeling that I got when I did write life insurance and I had some success in the business. So I gravitated back. I still had my office for a while. Now, by this time, I was working out of my house. And I just decided, I had a very good friend of mine, Rich Caputo. He's still there today. I just wrote a 38 with asset. We just wrote a $42,000 premium on him and his partner. So I go to Richard, and I have a resume. Now, this guy went to high school with my wife. We did joint business together, and I go to him with a resume, and I said, Richard, I'm looking for a job. And he looked at me, and he looked at my resume, and he says, you know what? He says, I just started a new company. It's called First Consultants. Now, he has a P&C business that deals with oil and gas industry commercially from New York to Florida. Very, very successful business in what he does. Plus, he has an employee share and an HR program that I actually participate in today for myself and my employee. So I go to Richard, and he says, okay. And he's telling me about this First Consultants, and he's looking for somebody to run this. And I looked him in the eye, and with my relationship with the Lord that Jody instrumentally helped me find, and has helped grow me, I looked at Richard and I said, that's why he sent me. Now you got to know Richard, he's a very Christian guy. Everything's that way. And I looked at him and I said, that's why he sent me. He said, okay, it's yours. So I said, okay. And we talked about what we were going to do, and it was basically a life insurance agency, but he wanted he wanted a name that had an arm's length. It wasn't looked at like an insurance agency, and that was why they created it. So I said, okay, but here's the rule. I said, you make me president. I have complete autonomy. I make all the decisions. He said, okay. So I started. 3 months later, we were making money. I had a young man, a guy that was working part-time doing backroom work for me and stuff, and I was paying him $2,200 a month in cubicle income. I'm in a big office, and now I got a cubicle where First Consultants is, and I'm paying him $2,200 a month. Short time goes by. Now, him and another guy named Phil Smalley own First Consultants. They're partners. Phil Smalley has another insurance agency, but he's also the HR director at St. Francis Hospital in Newcastle. Now, I'm going along, and all of a sudden I hear conversations, and I'm out, we're doing group insurance and different things in what we're doing. And I find out that as the HR director, Phil Smalley also handles all the health insurance and that for the hospital, unbeknownst to the hospital that it's his agency. His son works there. I don't know about you guys, but wouldn't that be a pretty big conflict of interest? You're an executive for a major hospital, and your agency is writing all the insurance in the back door, and you haven't disclosed that to the hospital. So I went to Richard, and I said, Richard, I says, this is what I found. Is this true? He says, yeah. I says, well, either he goes or I go. I said, the lawsuit, I mean, I'm trained now. I don't miss nothing that goes across the board. So I said, either he goes or I go. Long story short, I ended up buying Phil out for $2,500. A year later, Richard had another business enterprise, and he needed my cubicle, and we came to an agreement, and I bought him out. That's how I came to own First Consultants in 1999 in going forward from there. So it has been a journey. In 2001, I was invited to San Diego, California. And I got to meet a great lady, Dee Costa. I met Dee and Louise. Where are you at, Louise? I know you're in the room. There she is back in the back. And you know, it's been a struggle with the life insurance. And now, man, the selling these annuities looks easy. And I'm not afraid to get up in front of people and talk in front of people. So let's do the annuities. And I said, okay. I talked to my wife. We made a home equity loan. I borrowed $25,000 from the bank, put it in a checking account, and we did 48 seminars in the first 12 months. At the end of 12 months, I was $85,000 in whole. It didn't work. But I was going to make it work. I just kept, no coaching and no mentors now. And you got to realize I had asset there, but I'm not a great listener sometimes. And you know, I'm a my way kind of guy, and I have paid the price for that over and over and over again. So at the end of that year or so, and I'm in the hole, I stopped all the seminars. I talked to Louise, I talked to Dee, and Bob. Remember that Bob? He was my regional guy at that time. He's not there anymore. And we talked, and I said, okay, this LEAP thing. I was a national trainer in LEAP with Castellone. He trained me. So let's adjust the seminars and do comprehensive planning seminars using this LEAP concept. So 12 months later, I turned everything around. We made money. We paid I'm now cooking. But now I'm really moving toward the comprehensive financial planning approach and going that direction. And those of you that are new here and just becoming affiliated with Asset, don't be afraid to tell anybody about them, because when I was in trouble, I've had many times in the past, the first thing that happens is whoever you're counting on abandons you, and they abandon you quickly, just like the lawsuits. But Asset never abandoned me. Actually, they put some of their own money in my seminars to help me get going again. Now, all of that coming to today, when I talk about comprehensive planning, it's really about rule-based planning, maximization theory, maximum benefits, maximum money supply for the clients, versus risk tolerance, risk, because you realize in traditional planning, the only way you can make any money is what? Except risk. That's the perception of everybody out there. So this is about rule-based planning. And just of recently, you want to put my slide up so everybody can see it. This is the Family Money Farm. This is an idea. It took a year to get it trademarked, and it's approved. It'll be up there in a minute. And my concept of what I teach people today is the Family Money Farm. And the Family Money Farm is kind of unique, because if you think, I've been through infinite banking. Everybody, Nelson Nash is a personal friend of mine. I understand that. I understood it all. I just had trouble with some of it. Remember, I do it my way. And I apply economics. I have a car loan. Yes, I have a car loan on a home equity line of credit. My home equity line of credit interest is 3%. Minimum payment's like 100 and some bucks a month for just the interest, but I pay $561, which is the 48-month amortized payment that I pay to that home equity loan. Now, I could have borrowed it from the insurance company. I have almost 7 figures of cash value in 14 policies. So I have the money there to do it, but it's 5% to borrow over there. I'm in a 33% tax bracket, so I'd rather have the tax benefit, pay the 3 and get a little tax benefit than pay 5. That's what I teach clients. It's also about economics. And you know what? They talk about best interest for the client. That's really what it has to come down to, because when somebody questions you on why you did what you did, you have to answer the why question. Just like when you ask the client why, you're looking for the why. The family, I'm going to wrap up here because I'm out of my time. The tree. This family money farm. Imagine if Grandma and Grandpa, 30 years ago, had a meeting with the family. And they had this little meeting. And like I did with my daughter some time ago, and I put a piece of paper on the table, and I told her, I says, draw a line across the middle of the paper, and an inch or 2 above that, put a black dot. She said, okay. I says, no, wait a minute, we'll come back to that. God spoke to me and told me who's going to be in the Super Bowl in 2018. I know the 2 teams that are going to play. I know exactly what the score is going to be. I know who the key players are going to be. I know every detail there is about that 2018 Super Bowl. Guaranteed from God himself came to me in my sleep. I'm that positive about it. If that was true, folks, how much money would you bet on the 2018 Super Bowl with me? All of it, right? So I'm back to the dot on the paper, and I told my daughter, I said, you know, my life, I can do all things. I can be the example, and I strive to be. The title of my talk was Be the Example, and that's what I'm challenging you to do today, is be the best example in everything you do. We have the DOL problems because of examples that people have said in our business. All of the problems in the 40 years I've been in this, I can look back and say the problems came about because of the wrong examples that were set by people in our industry. Fortunately, a few. And I'm speaking to the choir. Believe me, I mean that with all my heart. So here it is. Someday when I die, it's over. But the day that happens, I have one thing that I can give to you, and that is my human life value. Most people have no clue on what that is or how to insure for it. If you're not recommending to your clients maximum life insurance, human life value, you are at risk, because someday somebody's going to die and their kids are going to say, why didn't you recommend my parents buy more life insurance? They got all this wealth and all this money, but they didn't have the most life insurance they could buy. Do you think the attorneys aren't going to look for you? I've read, this isn't me talking, this is stuff I've read that talks about this and the litigation that is potentially out there. So what I said is, let's put all the money we can together as a family and buy the most life insurance we can on my life. And we did. I had a heart attack in 2006. Some of that life insurance was term insurance, but it was convertible. And I was able to convert all of it, and it was a lot. And I had to do it over more than 1 year to do it, to get it all done, but that's what it was. If you look at the obituaries every morning in the paper, I look at the obits, and I look at those people, and some of them I see somebody I know, once in a while a client, fortunately not often. I always tell the clients, I don't have a lot of clients die, so you want to be my client, you'll live long. So I look at that and I wonder, when we look at the growing problems in the future financially, the money that's going to be needed by the families of the future, only you and I can create that money. There's nobody else that can do what we do. For a few pennies on the dollar to create that money, and we'll give you your pennies back. In fact, as we accumulate them, we'll let you use them to create an external rate of return. Oh, see, how do we sell life insurance? Most people, what's my internal rate of return? Doesn't matter. because that internal rate of return in a guaranteed product isn't going to be better than a bank. Maybe a little bit better with an insurance company, but not a lot. But what about the leverage I can create? And I could have bought into the stock market in January of 2009 when I bought Ford Motor Credit at $3.25 a share, sold it 18 months later for $18 a share and paid for my daughter's wedding. I was able to do that in a heartbeat because I could sign a paper and get a loan from the insurance company, and I put that money into the stock market. In the growth component, boom, there it was, and I made money. How many of your clients understood to do that? And I know there's a few of you in the room that understand what I'm talking about. So that rate of return on that money was created because I had access to capital. That's what life insurance gives you. It gives you access to capital. Now let's take it to eternal. Internal rate of return, external rate of return, and eternal rate of return. Pension maximization. Anybody ever heard of pension maximization? What allows pension maximization? Life insurance. If you've not seen person A, person B, that presentation, I'm committed. I'm here today. I'm honored to be here. And I committed. I told Dee and Louise, I have committed to helping this organization and help everybody here if I can provide anything for you to help you go forward with this. This is the beginning, this is the wrapping up of my book I've been working on. And this is the cover of the book, The Family Money Farm, the CFO Project. What's a CFO? Are you one at home? Are you teaching your clients how to be a CFO at home? They're all interested. When I explain this to people, I have had 100% closing ratio on qualified clients, on qualified prospects. Not everybody, I don't judge. People come in my door, I do the Lord's work. I do pro bono work. You know what pro bono is? People come to me and I sit and I give them advice. I help them with the knowledge and experience I have to help them do better and be better. I say, go do this and that and the other thing and then come back and see me. You have to live the business. This has to be part of your life. And I'm out of time, and I had a few other notes, but I just want to close with this. Who will join me? Who will become the example for others in our industry and teach others how to write more life insurance? Use annuities. You know, Jennifer, God love you, you said to me about, not just about life insurance. It's about everything, folks, because I pay for life insurance premiums with annuity distributions. People say, well, how am I going to pay for the life insurance? Well, they have more than enough money for their retirement, so annuitize an annuity and use that stream of money to pay for the life insurance to create the cash and the capital and what's going on. My little, I'm going to close with this. The little chap who follows me. Some of you may have heard this. Careful man I want to be, a little fellow follows me. I do not dare to go astray for fear he'll go the self-same way. I cannot want to escape his eyes. Whatever he sees me do, he tries. Like me, he says he's going to be the little chap who follows me. He thinks that I'm so very fine, believes in every word of mine. The base in me he must not see. The little chap who follows me. I must remember as I go through summer sun and winter snow, I'm building for the years to be the little chap who follows me. God bless you all. Thank you so much.